Hello, welcome to the self-learning podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on chapter 5, patterns of social inequality and exclusion. And our topic is the struggles of disabled. The differently abled are not disabled only because they are physically or mentally impaired, but also because society is built in a manner that does not cater to their needs. In contrast to the struggle over Dalit, Adivasis, or women's rights, the rights of the disabled have been recognized only very recently. Yet, in all historical periods, in all societies, there have been people who are disabled. One of the leading activists and scholars of disability in the Indian context, Anita Ghai, argues that this invisibility of the disabled can be compared to the invisible man of Ralph Ellison. Ellison's novel of that name is a famous indictment of racism against African American in the USA. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me, like the bodiless heads you see sometimes in the circus sideshows. It is as though I have been surrounded by mirrors of hard distorting glass. When they approach me, they see only my surroundings, themselves figments of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me. The very term disabled is significant because it draws attention to the fact that the public perception of the disabled needs to be questioned. Here are some common features central to the public perception of disability all over the world. Disability is understood as a biological given. Whenever a disabled person is confronted with problems, it is taken for granted that the problems originate from her or his impairment. The disabled person is seen as a victim. Disability is supposed to be linked with the disabled individual's self perception. The very idea of disability suggests that they are in need of help. In India, labels such as disability, handicap, crippled, blind, and the deaf are used synonymously. Often these terms are hurled at people as insults. In a culture that looks up to body perfection, all deviations from the perfect body signify abnormality, defect, and distortion. Labels such as "bechara," "poor thing," accentuate the victim status for the disabled perception. The roots of such attitudes lie in the cultural conception that views an impaired body as a result of fate. Destiny is seen as the culprit, and disabled people are the victims. The common perception views disability as retribution for past karmas or actions from which there can be no reprieve. The dominant cultural construction in India therefore looks at disability as essentially a characteristic of the individual. The popular images in mythology portray the disabled in an extremely negative fashion. The very term disabled challenges each of these assumptions. Terms such as mentally challenged, visually impaired, and physically impaired came to replace the more treat negative terms such as retarded, crippled, or lame. The disabled are rendered disabled not because they are biologically disabled, but because society renders them so. We are disabled by buildings that are not designed to admit us, and this is in turn leads to a range of further disablements regarding our education, our chances of gaining employment, our social lives, and so on. The disablement lies in the construction of society, not in the physical condition of the individual. The social construction of disability has yet another dimension. There is a close relationship between disability and poverty. Malnutrition, mothers weakened by frequent childbirth, inadequate immunization programs, accidents in our overcrowded homes all contribute to an incidence of disability among poor people that is higher than among living people in easier circumstances. Furthermore, disability creates and exacerbates poverty by increasing isolation and economic strain, not just for the individual but for the family. There is little doubt that disabled people are among the poorest in poor countries. Significantly, efforts to redress the situation have come from the disabled themselves. The government has had to respond as the notification. It is only recently, with the efforts of the disabled themselves, that some awareness is building in society on the need to rethink disability. This is illustrated by the newspaper report on the next page. Recognition of disability is absent from the wider educational discourse. This is evident from the historical practices within the educational system that continue to marginalize the issue of disability by maintaining two separate streams, one for disabled students and one for everyone else. In this chapter, we have looked at caste, tribe, gender, and disability as institutions that generate and perpetuate inequalities and exclusion. However, they also provoke struggles against these inequalities. Historically, the understanding of inequality in the social sciences has been dominated by notions of class, race, and more recently gender. It is only later that the complexities of other categories like caste and tribe have received attention. In the Indian context, caste, tribe, and gender are now getting the attention they deserve. But there remain categories that are still in need of attention, such as those who are marginalized by religion or by a combination of categories. More complex formation like groups defined by religion and caste, gender and religion, or caste and reason are likely to claim our attention in the near future, as shown, for example, by the such a committee report on the Muslim community. Now let us wind up the session, and we have come to the end of the chapter. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self Learning podcast.